Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lurking for Legends, a live video cast where my awesome co-host, epic fantasy author Richard H. Stevens, and I speak with people from all walks of the publishing industry. Lurking for Legends is live, as you guys can see, and it's interactive, so we encourage all of you viewers to chime in with questions for our guests or simply make comments on what you hear in the show. So tonight we have Konn Lavery, dark fantasy, horror, and thriller author. All dark stuff, though. Artist and web designer. So welcome, Konn. How are you tonight?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, welcome, Konn. It's nice to have you.
It's so great to have you here. There's with you, there's so much to talk about. It's going to be tough to keep it to 40 minutes, but we'll give it a shot anyway. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah. So, I'm a graphic designer by trade, and I've been doing that for just over a decade now, and freelancing for 7 years as a web designer and graphic designer and branding expert. So people hire me for a range of things, and then a writer by passion. So a lot of the stuff I do with the graphic design helps fund the books, because most of my stuff has been self-publishing. So you have to hire editors and pay for promo and stuff. So I write everywhere, as you mentioned, from fantasy, thrillers, and horrors, all the creepy stuff. And all of it seems to fall under those categories.
That's cool. And so tell us, let's just start with your latest book, Rave. I mean, you have a lot of books out there, and if anyone wants to check out Konn's site, he has like the macrocosm, which we'll probably talk about later as well, to show you all of the works in his world. But just for the moment, tell us about your latest one, Rave.
Yeah. The latest one is Rave, which is a Canadian-based horror novel. It takes place between British Columbia and Alberta, and it happened to be one of the most difficult books I'd written next to the fantasy series. But as a standalone book, it was the most challenging because it tackled a bunch of themes I wasn't quite familiar with doing before, such as like love triangles, which I hadn't done a lot of before, and making a plot realistic but still keeping that horror aspect so it doesn't just fall into a action thriller, which it was getting kind of close to. So it was combining all of that, and basically the whole story is about, in the late 90s, kids in Prince George are going to this super underground rave, and at the time raves were illegal, so they didn't have sponsors or anything, so it was super hush hush. No one talks about it. If you do, the cops bust it. And that happens in the book without spoiling too much. And a friend ends up dead, so they end up having to figure out how to get out of this because the cops think they did it, and there's a killer on the loose. And that's pretty much the whole premise of Rave.
That's awesome. Konn, I just think you should move just a bit to your right. I think we're just cutting your face off just a wee bit. There, that's better. Yeah, maybe.
There you go. Okay.
That's better. Yeah. I don't want to do the full 45 minutes with just half your face.
No.
Oh my goodness. So, no, that's awesome. So that book released in May 17th this year?
I think so. Somewhere around there.
Reading on your website. Yeah. So how's it being received by your fans?
So far, good. I had a number of advanced reviewers go through it. I had submitted to some review sites and some YouTubers. They're going through it, and everyone seems to be enjoying it, and they have great things to say about it. Like, it's fast paced, and it's actually the first full book that I brought out that's been in all present tense. So that's been a change from the previous writing where I've all done past tense. And I think so far I've actually enjoyed that type of writing more, which most of the new stuff will probably migrate that way. And fans seem to enjoy the change.
So the present tense is done from I point of view?
Kind of like
First-person point of view?
It is third person, but being the present tense where it's saying like says. So like the main character's name is Seth, so he'll be like, "Hey guys, Seth says," and then so it's always using that active present voice rather than said or screeched. It's screeched, and so it was a real change in head space because like that would be,
I know.
No, go ahead, Christie. Well, Christie, did you edit this, or is this is Konn one of your clients is editing? I'm just thinking that might be a editor as well if you're not used to it.
Yeah.
No, this one
No,
this is a different editor. Robin, right? Her name is Robin, I think.
Robin, yeah. I happened to meet her through a mutual friend, so they're just blind luck, and we've worked together for many years. And she saw the change too and thought it was a nice adjustment from what I'd done previously. So, yeah, I've been working with her for a long time, and she's grown as an editor and has shifted her focus, and I've changed as a writer, so my needs are different, and they've always seemed to kind of line up, which is nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to comment on the present tense, writing in the present tense. I think, did you find it, first of all, did you find it easier or difficult to kind of adjust to? But also, I know that a lot of, and this is the opposite, a lot of romance writers write in present tense because it's like you're there with the character. Is that kind of what you're aiming for in horror as well?
Yeah. No, pretty much, and because there's actually a big romance element to it. It's funny you mentioned that because I didn't know romance authors did that because I don't read romance. But no, yeah, I wanted them to really be there in the moment with the characters and connect with them. And an issue with that book from an earlier draft was uh, originally I just wanted to make a Canadian slasher in the spirit of old slashers, where you have these iconic killers and everyone just falls in love with the killer and they forget about the main characters. And the earlier draft really fell with that, and it was written in the present or the past tense. So I did a massive overhaul after I'd written some short stories. One I think is coming out, it might be coming out this month. It was the first short story I had written in present tense, and it was a real twist of the brain. But then eventually something clicked after going through this short story enough times. I was like, I get it, I can do present tense, and decided to just overhaul the entire book and write it in present tense to make people really be with the protagonist.
That's interesting. It sounds like a lot of work once you get the book written and you got to redo it again. But as long as you're happy with the outcome at the end, that's perfect.
Definitely. And Anita is saying, yeah, present tense can be tricky. I write some flash fiction in present tense. Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that either the spirit takes you or it doesn't, almost.
Yeah, and it doesn't always work with a story. Like if you're having, yeah, like if you've got a character, actually, I don't remember the author's name. It's a book called The Contortionist that I read. Really good. And the whole premise is about this guy who makes fake IDs and he sells them to people to start new lives. And he gets busted by the cops and he's telling them his stories. So it had to be in the past tense because present tense wouldn't work. So it doesn't always work in certain books.
That's interesting.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So I was looking on your website before I come on here, and I was really enamored. Actually, I'd spent a lot of time, and it's neat that you can actually hit plus and you can bring the picture up bigger because it's hard to see at the beginning because you have so many books in what is, and I'm going to screw this word up, is what is you call a macrocosm. Is that correct?
Macrocosm, yeah.
Macrocosm. What exactly is a macrocosm? I never heard that word before.
Yeah, it's a fancy word for the world. It's just putting everything into the world. So instead of micro, macro is large, and cosm is encompassing. So it's I don't know how I found out about the word. I was reading it on Wikipedia, and I was like, that's the word, because even from way back when I first started writing, I always knew everything was going to be in some superverse, and I didn't have a name for it. Didn't know what I was going to call it. So eventually the name came, which lined up nicely for when the short story collection was ready to go, because the short story collection acts as the glue for the whole story. Otherwise, each book is very independent with a few hints every now and then, like a guest character or a guest or a teaser to a particular item or something that exists in the world. So they've been loosely connected. And the macrocosm seemed to fit where it was vague enough and still gave freedom to write anything without it being kind of locked in. Like Star Wars is kind of locked in because it's stars and wars, so there's generally battles and stuff, and that's fine because that's Star Wars and they're doing well.
So with them,
that's right. I was just going to expand on this macrocosm before we move on. So now we talked about this before we went on air. I don't write linearly, so I don't write chronologically. I wrote my first series, and everything I've written since then has always been backwards. So my readers are probably wondering what the heck's going on with my timeline. Do you write chronologically, or do you bounce all over your macrocosm?
Oh yeah, all over the place. I got them here. The very, very, very first one was that one, the fantasy book. And that kind of jump started me into the writing, and thought I wanted to just write fantasy. But as I continued to write, I had more interests. And then I wrote Seed Me, which is the Edmonton based horror one. And after that, I wrote Yegman, which was a prequel in a way to Seed Me. So I've kind of jumped all over the place without any rhyme or reason. And then Rave takes place in the 90s, so it's even further back. But then I've done short stories that take place in the sci-fi aspect of the world where there's no actual novels yet. But eventually one day I'd love to write a sci-fi.
So then, like, if somebody were to go to your site and they wanted to start reading your books and they weren't sure exactly where to start, would you say that they should start at the very beginning of the macrocosm, or would you say it doesn't really matter? They can start wherever they want?
Pretty much wherever they want, like whatever they enjoy reading. And if they just want to encompass the whole macrocosm, the short story collection would be a good fit, because there's a character who was inspired by the Cheshire Cat, and he's in the fantasy series, and he helps the main character in the short story collection figure out how they died. So they witness other lives and try to figure out, okay, what happened to you, because they lost their memory, the protagonist. So you get an overarching story where this character helps the main protagonist understand what happened in the world. Like, oh, here's the fantasy world, and then eventually this is why it withered away into the modern days, and what happened after that led to the sci-fi and the technological advancements. So that's a good one, and it's a good mix of genres if they want to wrap their head around the whole story arc.
That's a great suggestion. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we can say something, Richard. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna wonder. So you got so many books in this all-encompassing universe. Now I have to ask you, because I know what I am, and I think Christie's the same. Is I'm a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants for the most part. I've developed having an Excel spreadsheet, and I put notes and stuff in it now, just to spur my memory. The way Lorena has blue eyes, and 4 books later, Lorena pops back in the book, and she's what color eyes. So instead of looking at my manuscript, I just go to the Excel spreadsheet. With so much things going on in your universe, are you a plotter? Like, do you have sticky notes all over the house, or how do you handle that?
I've done all of them. Like, I've done pansting, plotting, and fusion, like half plotting, where I just do a 1-pager, and it really has been all over the map. And lately, I've moved back to pansting, and it just feels more intuitive right now. Where plotting felt more in line with where I was at with writing, and now I'm really having a lot more fun doing that, and I think the stories are better for it. And for the keeping track of everything, that is a tough one. And I know, yeah, I used to have to flip through the books to try and find stuff, and eventually I just ended up making a section on the site that's a wiki. And I read an article where authors had done it as a little private website for themselves, and I was like, that's a great idea. So I thought I'd do it, and I made it public, so any super fan that wanted to get real nerdy and go down a rabbit hole, they can go to this Wikipedia that's on my site and drill into every character, every location, time, era, and item, and it references what book they're in, any stats, like if they had green eyes, if they're a fantasy creature, if they're in the future in sci-fi. And the Wikipedia will also do the auto linking, like the actual Wikipedia site. So it connects anything if you mention anything. So if a character had a particular sword and that sword's in the wiki, it auto links it. So it not only helps super nerds that want to get into stuff, it helps me when I'm trying to remember what the hell I did.
That's awesome.
That's such a good idea. I love that. That's so smart.
Yeah, and it's gotten easier to do these wikis because you can Most sites these days are built in a platform called WordPress, and you can get extensions that include all-in-one wikis. And I found one of those and just installed it, and then spent a lot of time updating and submitting all these entries because you have to write it all. So it's that's where the time gets taken up.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a simple wiki on my site. It's just 4 of the main characters in each of my books, but I'd like to expand it to, like you say, to include the weapons and everything else for the super fans that are right into your stuff, and they just have to know everything in the background. They probably know the books better than you do.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at a thing here. We get a couple of comments coming in. JD Estrada is sitting down for dinner. Just wanted to say hello. A couple of questions. Is your first Star Trek movie Wrath of Khan? Your favorite one? And would you ever work on graphic novels, graphic work, randomness, inspiration no one would suspect?
Ooh, I think it was my first Star Trek movie. It's either that or... Yeah, no, actually it would be that one. Yeah, that would be the first one, if memory serves correctly. But I've seen a lot of them, and yeah, they're all fun. So, and yes, my parents named me after Khan from Star Trek.
Oh, really? Cool. You know what? I didn't put that together until you actually just said that, even though I just read The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
And that Khan's not spelled the way it is on Star Trek.
No, they gave it a little bit of a different spelling to give it some ambiguity, but it's still there. I still get yelled down the street by my name.
You're not into these big bugs with little claws on the front, are you? No.
Nope.
Okay. Itch in my ear.
I don't.
Jay,
no super strength.
Would you ever work on a graphic novel? I know you do a lot of graphic work. So is that something that's in plans for your macrocosm?
Yeah, I've always wanted to. Like, I'll pull up Rave again. Like, I've done a lot of. I do the graphic design, and I've moved into recently what's known as photo illustration. So like here is one of the illustrations within Rave. So they're all done with photos, but then painted over top of. The fantasy series has line work. So I've done a lot of book illustrations, and I've actually done some maps for author clients, and it's a lot of work. So I would like to do a graphic novel or a comic, but it really just comes down to the amount of time it takes to do everything. And then if you include audiobooks, and then you've got your print books and the ebooks, and then marketing, and if you have other work you need to take care of and want a life still. So one day maybe, but not today.
Yeah, no, I can just imagine what it'd be like to do a graphic novel with all the work that goes into a picture. And JD's last question was, what's the randomest inspiration that no one would suspect?
Random inspiration.
Randomest.
Most
What's the bizarre inspiration you had for your books?
Just doing nothing, I'd have to say, is the most random, because you could just be sitting outside, or you could be sitting anywhere eating breakfast or driving the car, and you just get a random inspiration. I find those tend to be the biggest aha moments. It's when you finally manage to silence your brain from other ideas or anything, and it just hits your head. And it's like, I think that's where it's trusting time and the process help, because sometimes you just get sparked with an idea.
So how would you handle that in a car? I remember when I used to work, I would get my inspirations when I was on my drive to work, and by the time I got home, I had totally forgotten them. And they were great ideas, but I couldn't remember them. Like, did you have some way to write them down?
No, I just hope they stay in my head.
Just like repeating them like a crazy person. You're alone in the car and you're like, I hope they think that I have a Bluetooth on, because I'm just going to keep saying this over and over until I don't want to forget, So same here.
Their windows frost up so we can write it on the window with our finger. Huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There we go. That's a good one.
That's great. David Kelly is bringing up a great point. He's saying, Konn, I noticed you have a Patreon, and I want to give you a chance to talk about that too, Konn, because I know you added a new level recently. And he asks, do you find it hard writing things monthly? I would struggle with that.
Yeah, it certainly has been. That's actually where the short story collection came from. It started out as monthly short stories I did on my blog as more of a mental exercise, and I really didn't care who read them or who paid attention to them. Some were good, some weren't, and they needed a lot of love, and they allowed me to experiment and play. So like, even if I wasn't working on a book or something, if I just, instead of trying to commit to writing once a day at the time, I was like, if I could just write one thing a month and just see where it goes. And I liked a lot, but I didn't like all of the stories. So I just kept doing it. And then after a couple of years, I had enough to put together as a collection. And when you spend 2 years away from a story and come back and look at it with fresh eyes, it's like, oh, that's what was wrong with it. I'll just overhaul all of this and fix that. So after doing that for 2 years, I realized I can still do this. I did it for 24 months. So I could probably keep doing one short story a month, but see if people would be interested, because they gained more traction over the years as I kept doing it. So I thought I'd convert it to Patreon and see who'd be interested.
Yeah, and you have a new level there too at $1.50, right?
Yeah, and that gives all the other perks. Where like the first tier was the $5 tier, which gave you the monthly short story and written and audio, and you got the artwork to download. And the lower tier gets you all the other perks, like I'll do updates there, I'll give exclusive chapters or early access interviews to other authors so that people can learn about their work, and basically extras that accompany the regular subscription, just without the short stories. So it's those I want to show support without the $5.
Have you found that writing short stories more regularly helps you make your own work more succinct, if that was a problem at all before?
Big time. It has taught a lot about writing, the whole bit above, like about pacing and understanding characters and plots, because you're trying to do it in such a short amount of time. And before, for most of the free ones that I did for 2 years, most of them sat around 2,000 words, and then some of them were like two-parters, but 2,000 words, see if I could do it. Because I know a lot of writers, and even I did at the time, we were like struggling with word counts, and I was like, I don't know. So I was like, I'll do 2,000. And there was a lot of filler that wasn't needed. And eventually I scrapped a lot of that stuff and cleaned it up. And in the newer ones, I experiment further, where it's like, can I do 1,000-word short story and still have the same impact with the same pacing? And then others, it's like, I'll do a 4,000-word. So it's given me still lots of room to play and grow and try different writing styles as well, like first person, or write a journal entry, or write a character telling you the story instead, stuff like that.
Gives you a lot more room for play, I think, when you're doing your the works that the short stories are serious too, but like I don't know, I always think of a novel as like the serious work.
Yeah,
So
same.
yeah, it does give you a lot more to like sort of choose from in your arsenal, and just a broader sense of how to tell the story best, I guess.
Yeah, and another nice thing about it is, like with this whole macrocosm thing, some things just don't quite work as a full book, but there's such key elements to the overall arc, but they aren't important to individual books. So like telling about what happened between the modern world and the sci-fi, that didn't, there's details that don't quite work to be a full novel, but I could tell it in like 3 short stories, and then you get to learn like, oh, that's why the world fell apart.
That's awesome. You were talking about audio on your when you do your Patreon, and I noticed you do your own audio books. And for anyone who doesn't know, that black disc in front of Konn is actually an audio microphone. It's a special microphone that's and you were telling me all the neat perks and stuff it does. So you do your own audio books, all of your own audio books?
Yes. Yeah. That was one I started in September during here in Alberta. We had lots of the lockdowns for COVID. So I just decided to try something new. I needed a break from writing, and I have dabbled in music quite a bit. So I know a little bit about recording, and I have just to my side here a bunch of synths and bass guitar and percussion. So, and I have the microphones, because I played around with music, and I was like, oh, I should try doing an audiobook and see where that goes. And at first they were released as weekly episodic series. So I'd take a book.
I'm going to ask you about that episodic too. We'll do that after you.
Yeah. So I started with the first book, Seed Me, as a series once a week, because it takes time to record it. And it was a whole new skill, learning about a different type of pacing and pausing, because you're presenting and you're not quite acting, because at least I'm not an actor, so I can't do voice acting, but I could emphasize certain things and just adjust a slight tone or pitch to clarify who's talking. And it took about 3 books, but I think I finally learned how to do it.
You were mentioning too that microphone is something about your equipment there that takes out the P and the B, like the popping you were saying.
Yeah,
really cool.
That's this thing. It is known. Yeah, it's known as a depopper, and I think it was like $15, and it's got a little attachment at the bottom, so you can actually put it on any mic stand, and it cleans up the P's, the B's, inhales or lip smacking noises, all the annoying stuff. It clears them out.
You don't realize how much of that you do until you try to record something like this.
It just gets cringy, and you're just like, oh God, no.
Yeah, it's okay if you're reading them for your kids, but if you're putting it out professionally and you want people to buy them, you want it to sound a little professional. And
yes.
That's awesome. You do your own, and you release them on Spotify. Do you have them on other platforms as well? Like, do you have your novels on big platforms and then the episodic part on Spotify? Is that correct?
Yeah. So they all started on Anchor, which is owned by Spotify, but they distribute to iTunes and Google Podcasts, basically a bunch of podcast platforms. So they're episodic on there. And then I clean them up, fix any little tweaks or anything. So they're kind of the rough versions, the free one. And then the cleaned up final versions I throw on Audible and all the other distributors through Findaway, I believe, or Find My Voice. And they will distribute. Yeah, they'll distribute to all the others like Kobo, Walmart, Google, Apple, and then and it works out great.
Awesome. So David's saying his COVID mask would be a depopper.
They actually work well, the masks.
That's funny.
That's great. So you've also mentioned that actually, I don't remember if you mentioned it, that you do web design as well. Yeah, you did at the very beginning. You mentioned you do web design as well. And you did my site, which Amber is saying, I saw Christie's new website that Konn designed. He's outstanding. I agree wholeheartedly. Before I worked with Konn, I had nothing but bad experiences, to be honest with you, with web designers. And then I started working with Konn, and I don't have any kind of affiliate sponsorship with him or anything like that, but he's brilliant. Like, he's so much easier to work with than anybody else, and he works really fast. So if you guys are looking for somebody to work on your site, I would highly recommend Konn. But how do you manage your time? Because like, I have a list of the things that I know about that you do, and you probably do more than this. I mean, you're writing short stories at least once a month. You have the full-length novels that you're writing. You have your audiobooks you're recording, you have your web design business, which is, it's a full-on business. And then you're also doing art. Like, how do you manage your time with all that?
That's a good question. I think it's a cliche saying, but like, it's that saying, a project's never finished. It just has a due date. So I think I started taking that a lot more to heart. And it was my college instructor who had really kind of said it, where it finally hit my head. And then I was like, no, that's true. Because then I was going to college for design, and we learned all sorts of different processes, the creative process for graphic design, and how to do thumb sketches and hammer them out and take them to the next phase to eventually get a final logo design or a poster or something that is the final product without like fumbling around and getting lost. You trust the process and follow that accordingly, and you end up getting consistently something that's good, rather than listening to the back of your head that's questioning things. You do that. And then I found that really helped manage my time. because, man, even just in design, a lot of people burn out fast, and you can see people come and go in the design industry quite frequently because it can be a very daunting and demanding place, because it's kind of art, but it's kind of not, because you still have deliverables to offer someone in a very structured and technical manner, but it also has to be artistic in the sense that a logo has to inspire people. So it rides this weird line, and it can when people crush your work, that can be a bit much. So you learn to handle criticism, handle time. So I think a lot of it I owed going to graphic design school and then learning how to manage projects. I can only spend, I don't know, let's say 8 hours doing this logo because I'm getting paid X amount of money and my hourly rate is this. So if I do more, I'm probably going to end up hurting myself and losing money. So that kind of mindset kind of helps get everything else done, like the books, where before COVID, I used to do a lot more conventions and I'd sell books in person and sign them. So I was really hooked on that once a year convention season. And I was like, I got to get the next book out one way or another. I got to get it out. So somehow I managed to squeeze in the time for that.
Yeah, I find it a lot. That's a great answer. It is true that like so many other things can contribute to how to manage time and how to set your mind, like get the right mindset so that you get things done the way you want them to. I used to be a project manager, and I totally understand everything you just said about design and the phases and like pacing yourself and how all that works. So that is a great way to be able to apply that stuff. So we have a really nice comment from Amber who says, "Oh yeah, once my book is ready for launch, I'm definitely calling Konn for the website. No question there. You will be in good hands, Amber. I promise you. Really good hands.
Look forward to it."
Yeah. And then we have a question from Wanda. Welcome, Wanda. Where do you get ideas for your books and stories? Are any of your characters inspired by any Canadian serial killers specifically?
Ooh, ideas come from everywhere. They can be watching a movie, they could be friends, they could be myself, they could be watching the news, just sitting there. Other times they don't even form until you start writing and working on the book itself. So it's just, osmosis through everything in life. And no Canadian killer has actually inspired me. Actually, I don't think any real killer has inspired me. I always find them so horrifying. And then I end up writing about these killers that do horrific things. More so the characters end up being created or inspired by a certain trait that's either needed to be related to the protagonist, or someone I actually just know is like, that's a funny trait, but then you pull that trait into its own, and then you build a character around that trait that's entirely separate from someone you know.
That's a great answer. Richard, I'm going to hog Konn for a second, if you don't mind. Sorry, I have one more thing, if you don't mind. I just wanted to say, while we're on the topic of Canadian serial killers, I noticed that earlier in the interview you were saying specifically that some of your, or maybe all of your books are in Canada. And I noticed that's because so many horror, not just books, but movies that I watch or watched because I can't handle them anymore, are in America. And, when you watch Japanese horror, which is some of the scariest I've seen, it's in Japan, but I haven't really seen Canadian. So was that deliberate on your part because Canada isn't really represented as much as in horror, or is it just because you live there?
It's a bit of both. I think if I lived somewhere, I'd say the exact same thing. But because I do live in Canada, I figured it needs some representation. I've probably I've shot myself in the foot probably a little bit, because everyone thinks in fiction the world revolves around the States. It's just how it's written. Like, aliens always fly and go to the States; they don't go anywhere else. So it just seems to how the industries work, both in like everywhere. When you look at Hollywood, you look at the literary industry. So maybe one day I'll end up branching out from that, but I wanted to give Canada some cool stories and make it a creepy place, because it's a big place with not a lot of people. So like, who's stopping anyone from doing some really messed up stuff? Because actually they have done some messed up stuff, and it's because there's a lot of open space and it's easy to get forgotten or lost here.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I was wondering when I was looking that you did horror that I don't write horror at all, but I know as authors, even when you write fiction, even when you write fantasy fiction, there is some research involved. Christie does historical fiction. She's got a ton of research. I don't have to do as much, but there is some I have to do. Writing horror, though, imagine if we did a history search on your computer, we might find some interesting subjects. I think the police might be involved in questioning you downtown. But how do you go about researching the horror genre, and what types of things would you actually be looking up?
Ooh, yeah, it ranges on the horror style. Like Seed Me, which was kind of the first horror I did, it was kind of a creature feature, but involved cults, and I really had to design the creature and learn specifically about plants and their relationship and how they work in nature and symbiotic relationships. So I went down this huge biological rabbit hole on learning how animals interact with each other to basically design this creature. And then with Rave, it followed more of a path that I took with my crime thriller Yegman, where I had to talk with people. I actually interviewed people I knew. And with Rave, I was super lucky where I met a former RCMP officer at a book signing, and he agreed to do an interview with me. And I just asked him straight up questions. It'd be like, what would you do if you busted an underground rave with a headless body? And he's like, oh, well, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd be like writing stuff down and learning all of that. And other times the research takes you into weird places, like a character in Rave ends up in prison. So I had to learn about how many years you end up there for manslaughter. And I found a whole online dating site for prisoners that are curated by a single person because they can't have access to computers. So it just takes you down all sorts of cool places. And I'd say the research is the best part of writing a book, because you get to meet people and you get to find weird stuff on the internet and go places you wouldn't normally go.
I'd imagine that you'd maybe end up even coming up with further ideas to apply to other stories once you find some crazy things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You save it for later, and it's like, I'm coming back to that one.
Do you share that on Patreon?
Ooh, I probably should actually, now that I'm finally writing something new. So I should probably share some of the cool stuff I find.
That would be
Yeah, I
interesting.
find that so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard Christy talk about what she researches, and it would be an interesting thing for the readers to learn on Patreon, because they don't understand what actually goes into the writing of a book. They just think sit down to the computer and type and you're done. And there's so much stuff that goes behind the scenes. So I think your readers would really love to see that.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm going to do that because, yeah, I've already learned some weird stuff. So I'm making note of this.
There's no end to it, right?
Yeah.
So you touched on Canada being such a big country, and we're always horror always happens in the States for some bizarre reason, maybe because that's where everything happens, like Hollywood and all that. And Canada's always perceived as this nice country who's always saying, I'm sorry. So being a Canadian, what or who got you into the horror genre?
It actually was Clive Barker. He was the first one to get me into it, and I'd read some Stephen King. And then I used to play a lot of role-playing games where they're not the pen and paper ones, but the video game ones. And they were dense. Like there's so much dialogue and descriptions. This was before games could do intense audio with voice narration. So you ended up reading a lot. And yeah, I played a lot of those. So, and they were all dark and evil, and they weren't your typical fantasy with like more with knights and stuff and paladins. They were more like you're in hell and you woke up and you have to figure out how you get out of here. It was a good game, and yeah, those gave me a lot of inspiration, and I think that's why I started in the dark fantasy realm. But I've always enjoyed horror too, and I thought I'd explore more of that. And yeah, I ended up writing a bit of that genre too. So it just creepy things in general tend to inspire me, and that's where I go with the writing.
Cool.
I think you have a book now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure I got this right, but is it the Rutherford Manor series? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
and I
the
wanted to
one.
understand a little bit more about that. It seemed like, so that's White Hand and that's yours. And is Rutherford Manor, though, that is not your series? Is that right? You're part of it?
Yes, yeah. Rutherford Manor is much bigger kind of IP that involves other writers and other creative types, and they started out as a haunt actually here in Edmonton, and they have been basically pulling different talents together to put together a TV show. They've worked on comics. They've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes with that, and thankfully I met them actually at a convention. So it's true that you can meet people and network at conventions, which is super handy. And I was promoting another book at the time, and I met the creator and his wife, and we chit chatted for a little bit, and the conversation evolved into them asking if I want to work on a Rutherford Manor book, and then I ended up doing two and an audiobook for it. So it's a really cool world, and they did they made some fascinating characters that are super fun to write, and it was a lot of fun adapting them into a story and doing them justice.
So then what else would people find if they looked up Rutherford Manor? They find two of your books. And then it sounds like a lot of other stuff. It's just books, or there's also like, I don't know about movies, but like any kind of online stuff, or
Yeah,
what
yeah.
else is there?
You can find they did a trailer pitch, which is actually right on YouTube, and it's super fun. You can find that on their YouTube channel. If you go to their site, you can find the books. They have an album, which is pretty slick. They worked with a good musician and band. It's Daniel Martin and the Infamous. They do like metal but theatrical, and they did a whole album themed around the series. And uh, they actually, once I came on board, a lot of stuff ended up getting reworked so it would complement what they were working on with the whole universe. So yeah, you'll mostly find the books, the album, and the TV show trailer pitch on YouTube for now.
And speaking of albums, at your book launch, didn't you have, don't you have an album or some music at least that goes with your current book, Rave?
Yeah, that was a fun collaboration. There's four of the books I've done have novel scores to go with them because I like to dabble in music, big fan of it, and a lot of the music themes end up in the books. And with Rave, it was the second compilation I put together where I got to work with a number of musicians in they're all in Alberta, and they were all really willing to collaborate, and they did a fantastic job just taking certain scenes and emotions and compiling them into their own stylistic sound, and it put together like a full 10-track EP, and it's got a nice range of styles, but yeah, they work seamlessly together. So it's a lot of fun to create that, because you see movies have soundtracks, especially it was a bigger thing in the 90s where you had like the Matrix soundtrack, you had the Spawn soundtrack, and you see it now too, I guess, with like Tron or Black Panther, and it's a great idea. So like, why not books? Why can't books have a score to go with them?
I think that's fantastic and so cool that Alexandra Marie, very cool. I already want to read these. That's awesome. Yeah, the idea of music that's meant to be, I mean, like a lot of times we have our own music that we listen to when we write or when we read, but then when it's the author's music that's like meant to go with the book, that is even cooler.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it gets my music itch out, because every once in a while I get the idea in my head, like I'm gonna be a musician. I'm gonna start a project or something, and I'm definitely a writer first and foremost. But then I get my music itch out, and then I'm good. But it's given me the skills to like learn how to record audiobooks, and those audiobooks even have improv music in them too, where I can make use of all the music gear I bought and create music to go with each chapter, and then put the novel scores together so they're standalone albums that people can get into, and it creates a more cross-pollination when it's a compilation, so readers can discover new styles of music and new bands, but the bands can also get into reading different stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. So
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, so I see we're getting near the end of our episode. Is there when's your next book coming out, and what is it?
Ooh, that's a kind of a tie. I'm not sure if it's going to be. Ooh, actually, I got a few things on the go. What's immediately coming out? This is the first place I've actually said it. I'm going to retire 2 of my books and bring out second editions that are with a fresh edit, and they're older ones, so they needed fixing. But either for a brand new book, it might be the sequel to the short story collection, or it might be a brand new urban fantasy novel that starts to bridge the gap between the fantasy world and the modern world. And you get to learn about new characters, and you get to see some familiar lore and creatures.
Great. So there's nothing solid imminent yet. There's just
there's like 3 drafts that are like in various phases of completion.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. There's no definite timeline right now.
Yeah.
So just check your website. And speaking of your website, where can readers, if they want to buy your books, are you just on Amazon? Are you wide? Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, they are on most of the major providers. You can find the Rutherford Manor series just on Amazon. So they're all there. I think they're on like Kindle exclusive too. And the other ones are on Kobo, Google Play, iBooks, Amazon. You can find them all at konnlavery.com, which is KONNLAVERY.com. You can find the novel scores there too, the audiobooks, all the links, and then there's a newsletter that if you want to keep updated for when releases are coming out, and all the other tidbits that I'm up to.
Cool. So signed copies, they can just order them directly through your website, or?
Ooh, I got a page set up for Rave that is not on the main navigation, so it will be if you want a signed copy of Rave, and then the others are on my ever to-do list for signed copies. Yeah.
There's really something to do for sure.
Yeah.
So that was awesome, Konn. We really enjoyed having you in here, and you got such an amazing macrocosm. New word for me today, so that's great, and I've learned a new thing. And actually, I want to incorporate that so that my readers can see how my books are as well. So I'm glad we had you on here just for that reason. But thanks for sharing everything with us, and hopefully we can get you back on again maybe next year. And talk about what's come out between now and then. So just before we go, Christie, do you have anything new that you want to report on the Christie Stratos world?
I have, one thing on my Patreon, which you can join for just $1 a month. I have a brand new short story, which is called The Time Traveler's Truth, and that is historical fantasy. So the main time period is the 1840s, but there is time travel involved. So this is kind of the beginning of my foray into historical fantasy. I'll be doing both historical fiction and some historical fantasy. So definitely check that out. Like I said, just $1 to join, just patreon.com/Christie Stratos. That's my news for this week. How about you, Richard?
I love the fact that you're getting into fantasy. I'm starting to wear off on you.
Yes, it's your fault.
We'll get you writing about dragons real soon. Don't you worry. So,
Victorian dragons.
Yeah, Victorian dragons, yes, with bonnets on, yeah. So my news is, I was just thinking about this other day that I've got another audiobook that's going to be produced by my amazing narrator, Mikhail Roberts, and I was just wondering when he was about to do it, and the same day, 2 days ago, he got a hold of me and said, yep, he's starting production on it. So he's 3 chapters into that, and it should be done. It's going to be about 600 pages, but he says he'll have it done by the end of next month, which would be amazing. So I'm looking forward to editing that and then releasing that, the Bainbridge companion novels. So that's about all that's new for me. I'm still editing my 600-page manuscript that's releasing on June 15th. So I just have to finish the edits on that. So it's a little tight, but I think I'll get there. And that's it for me. So next week's guest is a poet, and this is going to be different. I don't think we've had any poets on here yet.
J.D. Estrada is a poet, but if you're is it David Ellis?
It's David Ellis, yeah. No, I know some of us do dabble in poetry, but I think David is a more full-fledged poet, if that's the proper way to say it.
Right.
He's an award-winning author of poetry, creative marketing, workbooks, journals, humorous fiction, and musical lyrics. And he's also the co-author and co-founder of the inspirational poetry magazine Auroras and Blossoms Poetry Journal. So that should be a great show. And until next week, for Christie and myself, we hope everyone stays safe and take good care. Good night.